Back to another video, and today we got our week 5 college football top 25 ranking. So in this video, pretty simple. We're going to do what we always do, and that is go through every single team in our top 25, review their game from the previous week, and then go ahead and make a prediction for their game in this upcoming week. Real quick before we get started, if you're new around here, make sure you subscribe, turn on the noties, and like this video if you enjoy. We do college football, NFL, college basketball, NBA, and MLB. So if you're interested in any of that, make sure you go down there, subscribe. This is the time to be on the channel. You're not going to want to miss out. Links in the description, as always, X, Twitch, TikTok, and Discord. Make sure you follow those, join those. With that being said, though, let's get on into our number 25 team. And the team that I have ranked number 25 this week is going to be Nebraska. Now, they drop out of the AP poll. And I think, that's reasonable. I kept them ranked. I have moved down 6 spots. Ultimately, they played a really close game with Illinois and came up just a little bit short. I was expecting them to win this game, but Dylan Raiola threw for almost 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. They didn't look bad necessarily. They just, weren't the better team that night. So I am going to give them. I still moved them down quite a bit, but this was a very good game. And Illinois is definitely better than we originally thought, that's for sure. So I will keep Nebraska in the top 25, but we'll be watching them closely here in this next week. Their game at Purdue, I do expect them to win. I think they'll have a little bit of a bounce back game. I think they win 30-17 here. But yeah, Nebraska, pretty tough game against Illinois. They just came up a bit short. Illinois' quarterback, we'll get to that when we talk about Illinois, but he looked really good. So Dylan Raiola didn't look bad necessarily. He did throw the pick, though, which did hurt them. Moving on, though, to our number 24 team, it's going to be A&M, moving down 1 spot. They're still in these rankings, but I'm really considering moving them out. They barely beat Bowling Green. It's an ugly game. You can't be beating Bowling Green by 6 points. I know Penn State beat them by 7, so maybe Bowling Green's just better than we realize. But yeah, A&M, not an impressive showing whatsoever. They had Marcel Reed at quarterback. Connor Weigman, no longer the starter, I guess. He threw for 173 yards, 2 touchdowns. The run game was going for A&M, though. They had 2 running backs over 90 yards rushing, so that's solid. Le'Veon Moss, and then it was actually the quarterback, Marcel Reed. My apologies. So he's a little bit of a dual threat guy, which I guess gives them a little bit of an interesting dynamic there. But yeah, you can't be losing or can't be winning against Bowling Green by 6 points. Now they have a home game here against Arkansas, and I wouldn't be surprised if they go on and lose this game. Arkansas looks like a really good team. I definitely could see them losing. I'm going to say they win, but I think it's going to be close. I think they win, though. They have it at home. That's a huge advantage. But if they lose, I wouldn't be surprised, and Arkansas could maybe make an appearance in the top 25. Moving on to number 23, it's going to be Boise, moving up 1 spot. They take care of business against Portland State. Ashton Genty, another ridiculous game. Boise State is now ranked in the AP poll, and I think for good reason. I actually ranked them after they lost to Oregon, which is kind of crazy. They moved up after a loss. But Ashton Genty, 127 yards on the ground on only 11 carries. He's averaging about 10.5 yards a carry on the season. Ridiculous stuff. He could definitely be a Heisman finalist. I wouldn't put it past him. Now, this game here against Washington State, I feel like people are sleeping on this game. This is a very good Washington State team. They're 4-0. They're getting a whole lot of votes in the AP poll to be ranked. They just missed the cut. I think they were the first team that missed. This is a really good game. Now, Boise gets it at home. I do think they win, but I think it's very close. I think they win 35-28 here. This is definitely one of the under the radar games because this is a pretty big week for college football. This is definitely one of the more underrated games people are sleeping on. I do think Boise State gets it done, though, at home. Moving on to Iowa State, they absolutely blow the brakes off of Arkansas State, winning 52-7. Did not expect the offense to go out there and perform the way they did. Maybe I'm a little bit lower on, I guess I am a little bit lower on Iowa State than the AP poll, but I just feel like the teams I have, I can't rank them ahead of, the teams I have ranked ahead of them. Rocco Becht threw for 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. He didn't necessarily have a crazy good game. It was really the run game for Iowa State. They had 5 different running backs with over 25 yards, which is insane. They had 5 total rushing touchdowns. I mean, they just let everyone eat, and it worked. So good on them. Now they got this game here at Houston. Houston's 1-3. I do expect them to win here, but I think it'll be a little bit of more of a low-scoring game than we saw last week from them. But they're looking like a sleeper team here in the Big 12 with some of the teams at the top, kind of, I don't want to say disappointing. Well, some of them have been disappointing. Moving on to number 21, Kansas State is a team that I guess you could say disappointing from last week. They get absolutely blown out on the road against BYU. Now I don't want to say I saw this coming, but I did think this game would be closer than people thought. I did still think Kansas State would win, but this was definitely a trap game here on the road. It's a night game. BYU is a team who's actually pretty solid. I believe they're 4-0 now. Yeah, this is definitely a trap game here, and they just fell right into the trap. They lose by almost 30 points. They got nothing going whatsoever offensively. This was after coming off the huge performance where they absolutely blow out Arizona 31-7. They go out here and just lay an egg. I mean, Avery Johnson throws 2 picks. He couldn't really get anything going throwing the ball. He had 74 rushing yards. DJ Giddens and Dylan Edwards combined for about 130 rushing yards, but they just couldn't get anything going through the air, and BYU really turned the ball over when they needed to and got the job done. So good on BYU. I definitely consider ranking BYU. They probably the first team out, though. If it was a top 26, BYU would be there. But they could definitely be ranked here in the coming weeks. Now they got this game here, home against Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State also lost. We'll get to them here shortly. But Kansas State gets this one at home. 2 teams coming off a loss. I do ultimately think Kansas State is still the better team. I believe I have Kansas State ranked ahead of them last week. If not, they were right next to each other. I do think Kansas State is slightly better, but as of right now, I have to have them lower just because of their resume. The BYU loss is definitely worse than a loss against Utah. But I do think Kansas State wins at home. I just feel like this is going to be a gritty game. I think running the ball, Ollie Gordon taking on Kansas State's kind of 3-headed monster with Avery Johnson at QB, Dylan Edwards, DJ Giddens. So I do think Ollie Gordon will start to get going. But I think Kansas State gets it done. I think they have a nice bounce-back game here and get the job done. Looking at Oklahoma, they lose at home against Tennessee. Now we'll start with the positives. The defense looks really good for Oklahoma. The defense, I will say, looks like a very, very sound, very strong defense. The bad news is the offense, and I guess the play calling you could throw in there too, does not look good. They benched Jackson Arnold. He was having a rough game. He's under 50% completion percentage, only threw for 50 yards, had 0 touchdowns and a pick. He had a QBR of 1.3. Michael Hawkins Jr. comes in, looks better. Doesn't look anything crazy. They cannot run the ball at all. They just couldn't block a soul. The offensive line. They got 36 total rushing yards, and throwing the ball they definitely had some problems here. Jackson Arnold, you can't fumble the ball twice and throw a pick, so the turnovers really killed Oklahoma in this game. Now Tennessee is a very good team, so I don't want to put this all on Oklahoma, but the final score of this game really doesn't show the story, I guess you could say, of this whole game. They definitely deserve to lose by more than 10 points, I'll say that. When looking at the future, they got an upcoming game at Auburn. I will say I do think they win. I think it's a low-scoring game, though. I am very worried about this offense, though. That it was pretty disappointing in this game against Tennessee. I do think they win, though. It's definitely a tough game, though, on the road. I think they get it done, though. I think they bounce back here. Moving on to number 19, another team moving down. We've had a lot of teams moving down quite a bit of spots down here in the lower parts of these rankings. Oklahoma State moving down 6 points after losing to Utah by 3. Again, I feel like the final score doesn't really tell the whole story of this game. Oklahoma State pretty much, they were getting dominated. I don't know if that's the right word, but they were losing by a good amount pretty much the whole game. I mean, there was a point in this game where they were down 22-3 late in the fourth. Now they did score two, late touchdowns in the fourth to make it look a little bit better for themselves. But ultimately, Utah does get the job done without Cam Rising, which does definitely worry me for Oklahoma State. They couldn't beat Utah with their backup quarterback in. Ollie Gordon has yet to really have a breakout game. He only ran for 42 yards on 11 carries this game. Brennan Presley, 47 yards receiving and a touchdown. He didn't have a crazy day whatsoever. Alan Bowman threw 2 picks. You can't be doing that. Utah ultimately gets the win. And I do think Oklahoma State loses this week, like I said. I just feel like the fact that it's on the road, they're coming off a game where they probably got beat up. It's going to be another physical game, and Ollie Gordon just hasn't gotten anything going. So it's hard for me to trust Oklahoma State when their best player really hasn't shown us anything this season. I do think Kansas State is overall better, and I think Oklahoma State does end up losing again. And could potentially be moving out of the top 25 next week. We will see if they lose. If they win, they'll definitely move up. But if they lose, could be a little worrisome here. Number 18, I got Louisville moving up 4 spots. They jump up quite a bit after beating a Georgia Tech team who I had ranked at some point. They win 31-19, and the offense looks really good for Louisville. Louisville's in the top 15 of the AP poll. I couldn't move them up that high just yet. They'll definitely have an opportunity to move up that high with their game at Notre Dame. Now, if they go into Notre Dame and beat them, they're definitely a top 15 team, probably even higher, honestly. The thing I worry about against Notre Dame, though, their running attack or rushing attack really hasn't done much this whole season. Tyler Show passing the ball has been very solid. Ja'Cory Brooks just had a really good game against Georgia Tech. Ultimately, it's on the road. Do I think Louisville is capable of winning this game? Yes. Do I think they will, though? I feel like with the way that Notre Dame plays, they're gonna manage the clock well. They're gonna be slow. They're gonna be physical. I think they ultimately in the trenches get the job done and win this one. I think they win 27-24, and I think Notre Dame needs a win like this to kind of rejuvenate their season here after the loss to Northern Illinois. So I do think Notre Dame wins, but this one could definitely go either way. I could see Louisville going in there and winning, and if they do, they'll definitely be up in the top 15, probably even higher than that. So we will see with Louisville. Moving to number 17, we got another huge riser, Illinois, moving up 8 spots in my rankings. They go into Nebraska and beat Nebraska. Sorry, that previous game should say at Nebraska. I forgot to switch it. But with all that being said, another tough road game at Penn State. Do I think they have a chance to win? I think they have a chance, but they just played a very tough game on the road. Finished in overtime. They win by 7 on a touchdown to end the game. They got another road game here. This one's going to be even tougher against a harder team. It's going to be a night game. Penn State's going to have it, packed out. They're going to be playing Mo Bamba in the stadium. It's going to be a ruckus environment. Illinois is already going to be beat up from this Nebraska game. I think you know where I'm going with this. It's hard for me not to go Penn State here. Penn State has looked really good to start the season. They just blew out a team like 50-something to 0. Yes, Illinois looked very impressive. If they go into Penn State and win this game, Illinois might be a top 10 team next week. I'm being so serious. So, huge implications on this game. It's hard for me to go against Penn State at home, though, and they're also an 18.5-point favorite, which I think is a little much, if you ask me, but I could definitely see Penn State blowing them out. I'm going to say it's 27-20 just because I think Illinois is a really good team, but I could definitely see it where they just go out and are just beat up, tired. Penn State's just more talented, bigger, stronger, faster. So I do think Penn State wins. They also get it at home. It's just all the signs are pointing towards Penn State in this game. But if Illinois goes out there and pulls off another upset, we could have some conversations here in the Big Ten about what's going on. Number 16, I got LSU. They looked. I'm starting to get a little worried about this LSU team this year. They did not look good in the first half against UCLA. Now, luckily, they figured it out in the second half and ended up winning by 17. But they were tied 17-17 going into halftime. Yeah, I'm starting to worry a little bit about this LSU team. Garrett Nussmeier had a solid game, 352 yards and 3 touchdowns. But I don't know. It didn't look good against UCLA, and UCLA is a team I'm not crazy high on. I do think they beat South Alabama here. I think they're going to score a lot of points. That's typical. But against these upper echelon teams here in the SEC, like an Ole Miss, like a Bama, even a A&M on the road, that's a tough place to win. Do I ultimately think they're better than any of these teams? I don't know. They haven't looked very impressive through the first 4 weeks of the season. They are 3-1 though. Number 15, I have Notre Dame. They get another kind of struggle-ish win here, 28-3. Now, could you say this is a trap game? I don't know. I mean, it's Miami, Ohio. I guess they got a game against Louisville this week, so maybe they were looking ahead a little bit. But yeah, 28-3. It's you want to see a little bit more points out of Notre Dame here. I mean, there's a point in the second quarter where they were losing 3-0. They do score 2 touchdowns late in the second quarter, and Miami, Ohio just couldn't do anything offensively. They force a lot of turnovers on defense, so I guess that's a good thing. But Riley Leonard couldn't really do much passing the ball. Now rushing the ball, 143 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Jeremiah Love also had 60 rushing yards. They ran for 270 yards and 3 touchdowns, so that's something to get excited about. That's kind of why I think they do beat Louisville. I just don't think Louisville keeps up in the trenches in the run game. They also get it at home. But definitely a little bit concerning for Notre Dame. I think this Louisville game is a get-right game. I wouldn't be surprised if they go out there and have a statement game. Now, I do think I'm predicting it to be close, but I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised if that did happen. Moving on to number 14, Clemson wins in a huge offensive explosion here. They win 59-35 at home against NC State, a team that was ranked in the AP poll to start the season, and a team that has kind of fallen off ever since the Tennessee game they played. But when looking at Clemson, man, they have back-to-back weeks where they put up about 60 points, which is a very impressive look after being absolutely humiliated here in the opener against Georgia. When looking at the upcoming game here against Stanford, it's hard for me not to predict that they don't do the same exact thing and go out there and absolutely dominate Stanford. I have them winning 42-17. They're favored by a whole lot of points. I don't know exactly what it is. But with that being said, Clemson has looked very solid for 2 weeks in a row, so I'm going to move them up quite a bit. I have them at 14, a little bit higher than the AP poll does. Number 13, I have USC moving down 4 spots after the loss to Michigan on the road. What I'll say with USC is, obviously this was going to be a tough game to win. On the road against Michigan, that's never easy, no matter how bad Michigan is. But you probably should have won this game for USC. I mean, they could not throw the ball. Michigan had 32 passing yards this game. Let that sink in. They had 32 passing yards. I mean, if I'm USC, I'm stacking the box. It's upsetting if you're a USC fan because you should have won this game. Khalil Mullings, 159 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. Donovan Edwards had 74 rushing yards and a touchdown. You know what they're going to do. They ran for almost 300 yards against you. I mean, USC should have won this game. I'm telling you, Michigan jumped out to a really hot start, which helped them a lot. They were up at a point in this game 14-3, and they were actually up 14-3 going into halftime. Now USC came back in the second half. and forced some turnovers, forced a whole lot of punts. But man, that last drive for Michigan, man, took up 3 minutes 25 seconds. Obviously, you have the huge Khalil Mullings run, 63 yards. I mean, one big play. It's unfortunate if you're USC, just because if you win this game, man, you're looking at potentially I mean, ceiling arguably 11-1, maybe even 12-0. I would go as far as to say that. I mean, they still have Penn State on the schedule, Nebraska, Notre Dame. But like, if you win this game against Michigan, man, you could be in the Big Ten championship game. Now they definitely still can. It's only one loss, but it's going to be a little bit tougher now. Yeah, they should have won this game though. I mean, man, they just let Michigan do whatever they wanted to them. I mean, now this was a vintage Michigan game, so we'll get to that when we get to Michigan. But yeah, USC, unfortunate loss. I do think they respond though with a pretty nice win here against Wisconsin. I am winning 34-17. Missouri moving down 4 spots. I was finally in Missouri. On Missouri after the Boston College win. I was like, okay, let's go. I was lower on Missouri than everyone else. I jump them up to number 8 after having them at like around 11, 12, 13-ish the whole year. And now they go out there and barely beat Vanderbilt. They win in overtime 30-27, and I honestly thought they were about to lose this game. Now, so they got pretty lucky with how things played out. They went in double overtime. I'm going to move them down 4 spots though. Missouri is one of those teams that's going to be up here just because how easy the schedule is and the fact that they're in the SEC. Coming upcoming game against A&M on the road. It's a bye this week, so no prediction there. Number 11, I have Michigan, moving up 9 spots back to where they pretty much started the season at. After they go out there and beat USC 27-24 on a last second touchdown. And yeah, this was a vintage Michigan game. This was what Michigan fans were waiting to see. They got absolutely boat raced by Texas. They go out there and beat USC, a top 10 team in my opinion, and really look like, the Michigan teams of the past. You've been waiting to see this with the run game. Alex Orji did absolutely nothing. Like I said, he had like 30 passing yards. Michigan almost ran for 300 yards though. So this is kind of what we expected from Michigan this season, and we finally see that. So I would say this is a good thing for them, playing to their strengths. Obviously now Colson Loveland got injured, so that's definitely a huge loss because he's really the only pass catcher they have. But if you're Michigan, when you go up against a team like Oregon, even teams like Illinois, Indiana's been doing this, Ohio State for sure. You saw this with Texas, a team that's going to throw the ball and score a lot of points and get out to a lead. Because if they're not leading, Michigan just can't really do much because they can't throw the ball. They have to be leading. If Michigan gets out to a good start, I mean it's hard to come back against them, just because how good the defense is and how good they are at managing the clock. But against Minnesota, they're the better team here, so I do think they win. I got them winning 27-14. But when looking at the rest of the schedule, there's still some pretty tough games. And like I said, if you're Michigan, I mean, obviously this is a huge win, but I'd still be a little cautious. I wouldn't overreact with this game because, like I said, they just the passing game is non-existent. Last year, they obviously a run-first team last year, but they could still throw the ball if need be with McCarthy. Now it's just like they can't. There's no option to throw the ball. It's only running the ball. So I wouldn't overreact with this one, but definitely celebrate it. I have them moving up 9 spots, and I'm talking all this negative stuff about them. Maybe that's just because I'm an Ohio State fan. Number 10, though, moving into the top 10, Utah, moving back up in these rankings, up 4 spots. Utah kind of did the opposite with Missouri. I was high on them all season. I finally moved them down quite a bit last week, and now I move them back up. They go out on the road against Oklahoma State and win with their backup quarterback. Very impressive win. They looked like a gritty team. This is a very gritty game. That's kind of what we expected from Utah. Now with Cam Rising back, this team's ceiling, goes up dramatically. I think they're definitely the favorite right now in the Big 12. I think they go out there against Arizona and win with or without Rising because I believe Oklahoma State's better than Arizona overall. But if Arizona's offense explodes, it's hard to keep up with them. And if Arizona is able to do whatever they want offensively, I don't think Utah wins. But ultimately, with Kyle Whittingham at head coach, I trust him. I think I trust the defense a lot too. I do think Utah can shut them down, or maybe not shut them down, slow them down enough to get the job done here. Number 9, I have Oregon moving up 2 spots. I'm starting to come around on Oregon. They were on the bye last week, so they didn't play, but they do move up 2 spots with some teams dropping down. And I'm starting to realize this is kind of what we expected from Oregon. So I do believe as the year goes on, Oregon will continue to kind of, slowly work their way back up these rankings to where they began at number 3. Maybe not that high, but definitely move up in these rankings for sure. That Ohio State game is just looming there in Week 6. Can't come soon enough. With that being said, though, they go on the road against UCLA for this game. I think they go out there and blow them out. I think Oregon's figured it out. I think we're gonna see what this team really is now after the 2 struggle weeks to start the season. Number 8, I have Penn State moving up 2. I thought about Oregon jumping Penn State. I ultimately kept them in front just because there's no reason to do that. Penn State just won 56-0, and with Penn State, they're gonna have a chance to prove themselves here against Illinois. If they win, I would have had to move Oregon down and Penn State ahead of them anyway, just because this is a pretty big win here against Illinois, and there's no point in me jumping them. With that being said, though, this upcoming game against Illinois, I do think they win. They're favored by 18.5 or 17.5, something like that. Crazy to me. That's a whole lot of points. With that being said, though, I do think they win. I just think they're overall the more talented team. They have it at home here. It's a night game. I think they win. Moving on to number 7, it's going to be Miami. Not moving. They blow out South Florida again. Now with Miami. This is looking like a 12-0 team, man. I mean, where's the loss on the schedule? At Louisville is probably their hardest game. I mean, this is looking like a 12-0 team written all over it. This looks like a college football playoff team. Now, yeah, I mean, this schedule is just terrible. That could hurt them in the long run if they do end up losing like a game or two. I just don't see that happening. South Florida is a team that was, in a one-possession game with Alabama in the fourth quarter. Miami goes on the road and wins by 35. They did start out a little slow, but they figured it out. Against Virginia Tech, I do expect this to be a little bit closer. Virginia Tech was a team in the preseason I thought could be, have upside to be an 8-9 win team this year. They're 2-2 right now. I do think Miami, though, has a little bit of a slower game here in the first ACC game of the season. Number 6, I got Ole Miss moving down 1 spot. Like I said last week, this is nothing wrong with Ole Miss. I want to point that out. They beat Georgia Southern by 40 points. Again, Ole Miss, nothing wrong here. I need to see Ole Miss start to play teams, and we're seeing that now with SEC play beginning. But this schedule is pretty favorable at LSU and home against Georgia, and I guess home against Oklahoma are really the tough games there. I expect them to win at least 2 of the 3 of those games. They also get the Georgia game at home, which could be interesting. But yeah, I mean, I said this last week. If Tennessee beats Oklahoma in dominating fashion, which I believe they pretty much handled the game, they would move up. So I have to keep my promise, and I do believe Tennessee deserves it right now over Ole Miss. Now, if they played, who would I pick? I honestly don't know. It's neck and neck here with Tennessee, and I guess with Alabama. I guess you can throw in that. I feel like this is kind of the next tier of teams here: Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama. With that being said, though, they got a home game against Kentucky, a Kentucky team that Georgia struggled with. I think Ole Miss starts out a little slow. I think they figure it out, though. I think they win 36-16. Moving on to number 5 in the country, I have Tennessee moving up one spot. They moved to 4-0 after another impressive win. And like I said, this final score really doesn't show how dominant they were in this game. The defense for Tennessee is absolutely elite. Ole Miss could not run the ball. Sorry, not Ole Miss. Oklahoma could not run the ball at all. Tennessee just shut them down. And offensively, they played a pretty good game as well. I mean, Nico Iamaleava threw for 194 yards and a touchdown, but they really didn't need him to do much. They ran for 151 yards as well. He did have 2 fumbles, which did hurt a little bit. I did expect him to turn it over here. This was his first, true road game. Now, at Arkansas, I could see him having a struggle game in this one. My apologies. I forgot they were on bye this week, so we're going to move on to Alabama. That's on me. Apologize for that one. With that being said, though, Alabama coming off the bye last week, they now have Georgia coming to town. By far the game of the week, probably the game of the year, definitely the game of the year up to this point at least. Georgia coming in to Bryant-Denny Stadium to take on the Tide. The last meeting they had in the SEC championship game last year, Alabama beat them 27-24. Georgia's going to have that in the back of their mind. With that being said, who's looked more impressive to start the year? It's kind of close. Georgia had the impressive win week 1 against Clemson, but then they struggled the last time we saw them play against Kentucky. Alabama has struggled, I guess you'd say, with South Florida, but did go into Wisconsin and win in dominating fashion. It's a very close game. I was going to take Alabama in this game, with the fact that it's at home, but then there was, just because Ryan Williams, this receiving core for Alabama, really this whole offense, Milrow's a problem, Ryan Williams is a huge problem. It is a very close decision. When looking at Georgia, they don't have really the weapons offensively Alabama does. They do have Trevor Etienne, which is, I believe, one of the keys to winning this game. I think they have to get him involved. Ultimately, who has the better defense here? I would say probably Georgia, but it is close. When looking at offense overall, I would probably argue Alabama has at least a more explosive offense. Georgia can limit the big plays. I think they win this game. The fact that it's in Alabama, though, is just really making this way harder than I would if it was, at Georgia. Ultimately, it's hard to go with Georgia here after the embarrassing performance against Kentucky. The reason I'm going to take Georgia, though, Kirby Smart is not facing Nick Saban anymore. I understand Kalen DeBoer is one of the best coaches in the country, but he's not Nick Saban, and I don't think anyone's going to, tell you he is. We will really see if Georgia just has an Alabama problem or if it was just a Nick Saban problem. Kirby Smart, I believe, is either 1-3 or 1-5 against Alabama as the Georgia head coach. I believe he's 1-5. With that being said, it's besides the point. That was when Nick Saban was around. I believe Georgia comes out angry they lost last year. And I think they get it done. I think they win 26-23. I think they go into Tuscaloosa and get the win. With all that being said, you just saw my prediction with Georgia. So no need to, I guess, really focusing on this game. I guess I'll explain it a little more. I think when looking at the coaching battle, Kirby Smart, I would argue, is the best coach in the country. I think most people would agree with me when saying that. No more Nick Saban, obviously. That was really the key. Because I'm telling you, right before I hit record on this video, I had Alabama winning. I switched it ultimately at the last second just because I trust Kirby Smart a little bit more than Kalen DeBoer. I know His record as a coach is unbelievable. He led Washington, of all programs, to a national championship appearance last year. Now he's at Bama with Jalen Milroe, who's arguably um, he is one of the favorites to win the Heisman. They have Ryan Williams, an explosive freshman receiver who's really just been putting on a show. And I will say, if Alabama can get those explosive plays with Milroe, maybe running the ball, with Ryan Williams on a deep ball, I do think they can win this game because I don't think Georgia really has explosivity as much as Alabama does offensively. But I do think Georgia's going to limit that. I just trust the coaching here a little bit more. This is Kalen DeBoer's, biggest game of his. I guess not his biggest game, because he's played Michigan in the national championship last year. But this is, probably I guess maybe his second biggest game of his coaching career. I mean, they're playing Georgia. Alabama versus Georgia is a huge game. I think Georgia wins, but this is going to be a game where the whole country is going to be watching. Even people who don't watch college football is going to be watching. It's Georgia versus Bama week. And yeah, I mean, this is going to be a great game. We're really going to learn a whole lot about both of these teams. I do think Georgia gets the job done, though, even though it's on the road. Number 2, I have Ohio State. Ohio State's going to stay at 2. I thought about dropping them, but Georgia and Bama didn't play a game last week. Ohio State did. They beat Marshall 49-14. They win by 35 points. Obviously, we'd want to see a little bit more. I don't like how the defense gave up 14 points here. But on the road against Michigan State, I don't think they struggle. I think they really get focused up for this first Big Ten game. It is on the road, but Michigan State doesn't really scare me too much. Now, I will say, Ohio State, whoever wins Georgia or Bama will jump Ohio State. Unless we see Ohio State, win like 100-0 against Michigan State, but that's not going to happen. So they're going to be at 2. They're probably going to move down, though, a spot. They will move down a spot next week, depending on who wins, Georgia versus Bama. Moving on, though, to the number 1 team, and Texas could potentially move down, in favor of the winner of Georgia versus Bama, just because, if one of them goes out there and blows the other out, I think they're deserving of the number 1 spot. But Texas, as of right now, is going to keep it, and I think even next week they'll still have a strong case to beat it, just because of that huge win in dominating fashion on the road against Michigan in the Big House. They go out and beat UL Monroe 51-3. I will say my prediction for this game was 50-0, so I was pretty spot on. Arch Manning looks very good. I don't think Quinn Ewers will play this game. I don't think it matters. I think Arch Manning goes out there and wins. I think it's a little bit closer than the games they've been playing so far to start the season, but 49-17 is not a close game whatsoever. But first SEC game, maybe they start out their first 2-3 drives a little slow. I think they'll figure it out. I think they win. No problems or no questions asked. Quinn Ewers, I do think, will be back for Red River against Oklahoma. And then, obviously, I think they'll need him back against Georgia there that following week. But they do have a bye week in between Mississippi State and Oklahoma, which does help out a little bit, a lot bit for them. But that's going to do it for the Week 5 College Football Playoff Top 25 rankings. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, make sure you go on there, leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, and turn on the noties to make sure you don't miss whenever we drop. Like I said, we're doing weekly videos for college football, weekly NFL game predictions. MLB All Around is about to conclude, actually. So we'll have one last episode probably this week, and then an MLB playoff predictions probably Monday. And then with basketball season around the corner, NBA videos and college basketball videos will be coming soon. So like I said, this is the time to be on this channel. Make sure you go on there, subscribe if you are new. Links in the description as always, X, Twitch, TikTok, Discord. Follow those, join all those. With that being said, hope you guys enjoyed this one. I'll see you guys tomorrow with the Week 4 NFL game picks. Hope you guys enjoyed.